All right, what's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 305. My name is Steve, and I'm here as always, my co-host, and they are.
I'm Ron. I'm sorry I'm so low, man. I just had to place the camera in a weird place. I look like a talking head.
Like a head, yeah, just a head.
Yeah,
but a good-looking head.
Thanks, man.
You're welcome.
And
you must be
you're a talking head named Ron, and I'm a talking head and shoulders named John. And 305 is an area code. Fellas, do you know what 305 is the area code for? I would say this is a famous county.
Madison County?
No, if you were following the news around the 2000 election, this is a famous county.
I don't know.
I think this county is famous for the hanging chads. I believe it was Miami-Dade County.
Florida. Yeah, Florida. I was gonna say.
Oh,
Miami-Dade.
Or
so
as they call it in basketball, Wade County, because of Dwayne Wade. Champion.
Well, so 305. This is our Miami episode, and we didn't do anything.
Miami's prominently featured in one of the movies we're going to talk about too, which I don't think John saw, but
oh, absolutely, let's do it.
Yeah, but yeah, today's going to be no, the other one,
a movie about the future.
Okay. The other F word. Yeah, this is going to be a catch-up episode. Like, we took last week off. John was traveling. Ron and I just kind of living busy lives and just taking a breath. But we're going to just kind of get together, talk about a bunch of stuff today. The big feature for the episode is going to probably be the new Amazon Prime exclusive movie coming out today, The Tomorrow War, starring Chris Pratt. But we did see a lot of stuff in the past 2 weeks, including some discussion on the coverage that we were able to do for the Tribeca Film Festival. So where do you guys think we should start with this episode? I mean, there's a lot to go through, but what's your feeling on a good starting point?
Maybe Tribeca, then, because there's so many movies, so many things. Okay. Does that work for you guys?
Yeah,
sounds amazing.
Okay.
So Tribeca this year had an in-person and some sort of virtual element to the festival, much like Sundance, South by Southwest. And I mean, it seems like a lot of the festivals are going to do some version of this going forward.
Yes.
And I think we talked about it when we did the Sundance one. It was like, this seems like a really great decision, even beyond, a pandemic state or anything like that, because it's just a way to really get people involved that can't physically be there or are nowhere near where these festivals are being held. And for us, the fact that we've been able to participate in 3 different festivals this year that we would have never been participating in otherwise, it's just like, wow, this is great. So yeah, they were kind enough to kind of give us access to some of the titles through their Tribeca at Home portion of the festival, which is like a mix of movies that were made available through a digital library once they had their premiere at the actual festival for those that were in attendance. So we probably collectively saw a lot of movies. I don't know if we all saw a single movie, all saw the same movie. But I guess you want to kind of go around and mention some ones that we've seen, just to kind of give some acknowledgement and some attention to some of these ones.
Yeah, sure, man.
Why don't you start it off, Ron? Why don't you tell us?
Okay, so maybe I should I'll list some standout ones to me. So there were 2 shorts that I really, really enjoyed. One was Waves, which was a short directed by Agazi Desta. It's about a kid that needs a haircut and he wants waves and he has like a big afro. It's really short and kind of amazing, and he's deaf. So he, in order for him to get his haircut, he has to take his aid off of his ear. Yeah. So it's just really, really well done. Really, it kind of warms your heart. You might tear up a little bit. That was pretty cool. And the second short that is really a standout to me was Zach Woods, who's done Veep and Avenue 5 and lots of other stuff. Great comedic actor. He did a short called David, which stars Will Ferrell and William Jackson Harper. You've probably seen William Jackson Harper in a ton of stuff. He did that show about death.
Good Place.
Good Place. Really funny in that. But this was about a man that was seeking therapy. Will Ferrell is his therapist, and then his son kind of bursts into the session because he has a wrestling match, and he's kind of rushing. He's rushing his man. Is talking about killing himself to stop talking to his dad so that he can go to the wrestling match. It is comedically on point. I don't know, like I just kind of Googled Tribeca stuff to look out for, and that came up, and I watched it. I watched it twice actually, and that's pretty cool. I watched a ton of features, but let me just name 3 that kind of stood out to me, because there were a ton, but Stockholm Syndrome was a documentary about A$AP Rocky, the rapper that got arrested overseas for a weird altercation that happened in Stockholm, where a fan essentially attacks him, and he responds by punching the guy, and he stays in jail for like 6 months straight in Stockholm. It's like torturous. There's a man slinging shit next to him. It is a really heartfelt thing. And what the irony of it is, when he was right before he left the Stockholm, he had made all these like off-color Black Lives Matter sort of things. Like, I'm a black man and can't relate to Black Lives Matter. So when he left, he had this idea that he was invincible and not among regular black people. And then he was treated like a common criminal when he got to Stockholm. It's beautiful. This guy's actually dating Rihanna, if that's like a thing, but like, there's a lot of prominent stars in it. Kanye West, Rihanna, Naomi Campbell. It's a really well done documentary. Mark Marion and some other people. It's a full-length film about a couple that gets married that decides to open up their relationship. Not really familiar with any of the actors, but it's a really funny movie. It stars Haley Law and Ben Rosenfield. I fucking love that movie. It's really funny and really kind of gives you this feeling about dating and how relationships should be treated. The last one that I wanted to highlight, I mean, if we do a round robin, I'll mention some more, but See From Me, which was a really cool action film by Randall Akita. And it's about a blind woman that's house sitting, and the house gets robbed, and her aide that she calls like for helping her see, there's like a phone app that she uses, kind of an assistant to guide her through things, and that aide happens to be really good at first person shooters, and she walks her through defending herself in the house. Funny. It's That's fucking funny. Cool, man. It's like it's a thriller with some comedy elements, but mostly thriller.
What is that one called?
See For Me.
See For Me. Okay.
Yeah. So that was the 3. But if you come back around, I'll name some other ones. But those are the 3 that stood out to me. What about you? Oh, and the Dick Gregory documentary, the one and only Dick Gregory, coming out on Showtime in like a month. Yeah. Fucking incredible. All right. That's it.
What about you, John?
I maybe you should go, because I saw probably the least of any of us. I was getting ready for a trip and then on a trip, and so I only saw a couple things. But I want to say one of them was See For Me, and I would say is inventive and yeah. I mean, I always gravitate towards some genre thing on the schedule like that,
right?
And I like when festivals, they seem to program them still. It's almost like it went through a phase where a lot of it was happening, and now I feel like at least one or two of the movies in a festival slate is going to be sort of not like a midnight movie necessarily, but it's going to have strong genre elements to it at least. Yeah. And this is the kind of inventive movie that you expect to see at a film festival. So yeah, no, I thought it was clever, and I would like to see what happens when that movie gets more widely released. It feels like one of those that people might talk about.
People go lose their shit, man. If it winds up on a major, like a streaming service, Hulu or Netflix, man, people are going to talk about that movie. It's cool.
So I'll mention a couple. I also saw David, the short that Ronald mentioned, directed by Zach Woods. Yeah, most people probably know him from either Veep or probably Silicon Valley. He was on that as well. But yeah, I'd heard about that. Like, I think it maybe even played at Sundance or one of the other ones that we were able to go to. But I didn't get to see it then, but I was happy to finally see it. Yeah, it's great. It's Fred Heshinger, the kid who plays the guy who plays his son, David, who's in the short, is also coming up. He was in The Woman in the Window recently, which was a horrible movie, but he's also in at least, I think, 2 of the entries in the Fear Street trilogy, the movie series that Netflix is dropping over the next 3 weeks, which I'm excited to see and to talk about on the podcast eventually. But
I'm so excited about that, man.
I thought he was great in the short. I mean, I thought he was like just a ball of fire, like, it's kind of like the dynamic of the whole short is really, really impressive. And not even beyond just the comedy and the drama, but just like the tone of the session with the therapist and the patient. And then when the sun comes in, it literally is like, it's like, kerosene on a fire. I don't know. It's really good. But I thought that was great. The other short that I saw was called Last Meal, which was a short form doc about basically talking about, it was an investigation basically into capital punishment and the idea of honoring a last meal. And it kind of goes through what some of the infamous last meals of some of the more known criminals in history, and kind of dissecting it down to a little bit into like red state, blue states, and white, black, male, female, like things like it's a short doc, but it did a pretty effective job at kind of at least kind of drawing a line to connect some of the ideas of criticisms rather of capital punishment and what these meals mean or don't mean to those on death row. It was really interesting. I mean, a lot to be said in it about like, the complexities of what some people would request and, kind of how it would talk to like the intellectual level of some of the people that were about to be executed and like, how could they possibly be there? I don't know. I thought it was really interesting and really kind of the production of it's pretty impressive. Like it's just very shiny and like, which is kind of disarming because you're talking about something very kind of heavy, but the way they shoot everything with recreating these meals on like a display of what all these people asked for. It's kind of disarming a little bit. But so those were the 2 shorts that I saw. I wanted to mention the movie How It Ends, Zoe Lister-Jones.
Oh man, I love that movie.
I thought that was really good. Yeah,
it's really good.
And the girl who's in it, who plays the girl that she's going around the movie with. I guess I don't want to spoil anything. Yeah. But she was recently was Erin in Mayor of Easttown, the girl who was killed in the pilot of Mayor of Easttown. But it's basically, that's just kind of like kind of comedy drama. There's this character just kind of wandering around before the world ends, trying to make this like last big party. And on the way there, she kind of crosses different characters from different parts of her life and has some pretty interesting conversations with them. But I thought that was really good. Also, I watched the documentary, The First Step, which was a doc about Van Jones, and basically just about his attempts to kind of work with both sides of the aisle and getting prison reform bill through back, I guess, in 2018, and still today. But basically just, I thought it was pretty good. I mean, it's like one of those docs that's kind of weird because like there's an issue happening that they're talking about in the doc, but then it becomes a little bit more like about the personality in the doc, like about him. And I don't know that balance was perfect there. Like I don't really know much about Van Jones. I mean, I definitely have seen him before on TV and I've watched a lot of his commentary, especially during the election cycles, but his attempts to kind of start the conversation, after heavily criticizing like the whole Trump administration, but then to cross the aisle and like work with Jared Kushner to like try to get this bill through, and working with, both the sides of the divide in each party. It's just one of those things where I watch and you're just like, God, politics is just horrible.
Yeah.
It's just like this like, there's something lost entirely in these conversations when they're just like talking about human life and like people, and they're just not people. They're just like nouns in a sentence to them, and
Yeah.
they don't matter. I don't know, it's just weird. But I thought the documentary was interesting in the least because of this idea of like, do you want to try to build a bridge, or do you want to have complete loyalty to one side or the other and refuse to like hear a conversation that is not something that mirrors what you say or do every day. So at least in that sense, I thought it was interesting. That's kind of what he's trying to do in the documentary, and kind of facing criticism from every which way you can think. But the other one, I don't know. I'll also mention that we talked about this. I think you guys may have seen this too, but the Catch the Fair one.
Yes.
Did you see that, John, by chance?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So I thought this one was great, actually. This is one that I feel like I guess like Ronald said about the other title he was mentioning, like I think on the right service, if it finds some sort of the proper distribution, I don't know, but like I think the director, what is it, Joseph Wladika, I think is his last name. He did some episodes of Narcos and The Terror, that TNT series. It's just a really well shot. It's a gorgeous little revenge thriller. The lead actress, who I think is an actual boxer in real life, you were saying, right,
Yeah,
Ronald?
she's a boxer and Native American. Like it's
right.
like pretty damn unique.
Yeah,
and queer. Like it's like this
right.
specific.
Yeah, it's just like a, it's a pretty brutal revenge thriller, just about this, boxer sister who basically inserts herself into this human trafficking ring to try to track down her missing sister, and kind of slowly is kind of going levels up as she goes along, trying to find what happened or where she is or who's responsible for it. And again, I think the filmmaking in this is great, and I really, really hope that people see this. And I'm looking forward to what this filmmaker does next, for sure, because I recognized his name from Narcos and The Terror when I saw it pop up on the screen. But
we should try to get her on the show. I saw
it was really good. Yeah, I saw you say that earlier. Yeah. Did you end up talking to her, or for the other thing, for your other pod?
No. So, but okay. I think we should the studio said something about,
Yeah, we should. Yeah, that was. I thought that was
that'd
great.
Be awesome.
Yeah, and like an amazing like final 10 minutes too. Like the movie ends like kills it at the end. So it's great. So what about you, John? Come on, let's circle back. What did you watch?
Well, I mean, I mentioned that I saw See For Me, and then the other thing that I saw that I wanted to kind of recommend, and also say this is kind of in the line of if people enjoyed the Orange Years that we had the directors for that documentary on, about the Nickelodeon, the kind of golden age of Nickelodeon, the kids entertainment channel. I would say that this film Clay Dream, about Will Vinton, who's the guy who, maybe not the inventor of clay animation, but definitely claymation. When I was growing up, that was the thing associated with him. And it was the California raisins from those commercials. The Noid from those Domino's ads and other things. But at the time, it was kind of a parallel to, other animation you would see. There were different people doing stop motion, but clay animation, and specifically claymation, was something that was very associated with Will Vinton. And he, tried different ways of kind of expanding what he was able to do, and, made a lot of money at different times. I don't know if you saw the Eddie Murphy show, the PJs.
Yes.
That Will Vinton Studios was responsible for that animation. So, I mean, he continued trying to do things, and, up through the 90s was attempting to get like a lot of series on the air, and there was kind of a bubble that burst. And then when my guess would be that when computer generated animation became the norm, it was hard to get people excited about this kind of charming but sort of clunky, form of animation at times. Very handmade, very homemade. But what was cool about the doc was it really tracks his rise and fall, and the fall is really sort of due to his own kind of professional naivety and maybe a little bit of hubris. There's a little bit of both of those things. He was sort of at times seemingly wanting to inflate himself to be like the next Walt Disney, even though what he was trying to offer was such a narrow thing compared to what Disney would have. But I mean, he wanted to have a theme park. He wanted his name to be associated with the studio. Even his signature, his logo kind of resembled the Walt Disney kind of W. His name, Will Vinton. So he clearly had kind of a complex. But on another level, he was sort of a Jim Henson figure who was sort of like started in this kind of counterculture way and became mainstream, doing this very personal form of art, that for at least a time, not that people revere the California Raisins, but they were everywhere.
They were.
And other things that he did, like the Noid for the Domino's commercials, that was the kind of shit people put on t-shirts for a good solid 5-year period there. So I mean, he cracked that cultural consciousness, but never really became what maybe he could have become. And instead of the John Kricfalusi story with like Ren and Stimpy, where you look behind the scenes and you go, oh, I see why this person was sort of toxic and why they failed. With Will Vinton, it really is down to sort of, he's got like a good-natured kind of bravado that did not serve him well in some ways. And then if you really know the story, his studio is the studio that Phil Knight, funded and then kind of stole from him. So Leica began as Will Vinton Studios. I'm not going to say much more than that, but almost to say that like, it was like, oh yeah, I love Leica and I love everything they've done. And I love Travis Knight as a director has made some of my favorite animation in recent years. But hearing the story of how they kind of came in and took over Will Vinton's operation, it's one of those things where as a businessman, you go, well, he kind of set himself up for it. But if you look at it on the optics or just the sort of emotional component of it, it taints it like just a tiny bit, but not in such a way that makes you feel like, oh, this doc is trying to vilify people. It actually is very much about Will Vinton sort of accepting the mistakes he made, and I thought it was very touching and poignant in the end of the doc. I mean, it really got me. I didn't expect it to go emotionally where it goes in the last few minutes, and it really kind of packed a punch. But it was also just a well-made documentary. It reminded me of like the Sparks doc and other things that have been out recently, where it just takes the career of somebody and goes into it with enough insider information and enough like exclusive footage and enough like, oh, I didn't know that, type of stuff. But it goes beyond the sort of puff piece or electronic press kit that you might expect a movie like this would be. So in that sense, I did enjoy it as a movie and as just a subject that I was like, oh yeah, I don't know enough about Will Vinton. But now I feel like I know why he got so big and why he kind of disappeared.
Right.
Clay Dream. I don't know if I said the name of the movie. Clay Dream.
Okay. Yeah. Were there other ones that you wanted to mention, Steve?
Well, I mean, it's on Hulu now. It came out last week on Hulu. But did you guys see False Positive at the fest, or have you seen it since?
I haven't seen it yet.
So that was at the festival too. Yeah, I watched it through the Tribeca thing, but I wasn't really a fan of the movie. I mean, I thought it started out interestingly, but just kind of goes off the rails like the last 30-40 minutes of the movie. I think Alana Glazer is actually pretty good in it. Kind of interesting seeing her do something different than Broad City. But I think she's probably the better part of the movie. Like Justin Theroux, Pierce Brosnan's in it, Gretchen Mol. He's got a really pretty awesome cast. Like when it gets to the turn or the actual what's going on in this movie, it's kind of I think it's a little too obvious, but and from that point I feel like it just kind of loses any kind of real narrative path and just kind of goes kind of wild in the last 30. But it's kind of those things like where I'm like, this was like promoted as like a big A24 movie, and then it just kind of disappeared, and then it was like, oh, it's coming on a Hulu next week or something, like there really wasn't a lot around it. So it's like one of these things where you're just like, they're very aware of their movies, and when they have outlets like this now, they're like, let's cut our losses and maybe sell it off and go that route and not have to maybe tarnish the A24 record. Because I mean, a lot of people don't know this is an A24 movie because they kind of got buried and like not buried, but it kind of went the Hulu route and didn't get the big like, oh, this is like elevated horror and A24. But I don't know.
More like smell-elevated horror.
Ooh.
You see, that's what we
sorry. But yeah, I was actually really disappointed with it. I thought the trailer was pretty cool and I liked most of the cast, but yeah.
It wasn't it. Damn.
Wasn't it for me, man. I mean, I'd be curious what you guys think of it.
Off. It looked like a Shudder direct to Shudder movie or something. Yeah.
Something is off in it. Yeah.
Damn.
Which is not to say that has to be bad, but I do think there's something about when you say the A24 imprint does kind of carry with it some level of prestige, even if we sort of push back on that idea sometimes of prestige horror. I do think that there was something about it that didn't look, I just got to see that. But when it was on Hulu, I was tempted every day when I was kind of clicking past it to watch Dave or Hell's Kitchen or Rick and Morty, or I'm trying to think of the other things I've been choosing over watching it.
Anything at this point over that.
Pin 15. Nikki finally got into Pin 15, and we've been kind of tearing through those.
Oh wow!
And,
nice.
I keep wondering when we might see the second half of season 2.
Half of the season.
But have you seen? They both have been. I don't know if they've had their babies yet, but they both been pregnant in that interval.
Yeah.
So in my mind, it's like, okay, that might be part, that plus COVID year might be a part.
Yeah.
You know, might be behind a delay. But what I'm wondering is, does that mean that the kid actors are suddenly going to look like grown-ups the next time?
Probably. I want to mention a couple more films since we're Laura Lee is a movie starring Pablo Schreiber and Jenna Malone. It's about a guy that does 11 years in jail. He gets out, and the love of his life was in high school, and he hasn't really obviously dated anybody since. So he comes back, sees her, and falls for her, but she has kids after that aren't from him. That kind of happened around the time that he left for jail, and he kind of has to process the idea of like, what if you were right about your instincts about a person being perfect for you, but the life that they have now isn't what you thought was ideal, essentially. And this man has to, he did 15 years in jail, so he has to power through this crazy, and he comes from a biker gang. He was in a biker gang before he went to jail. So Pablo being amazing and Jenna also being amazing. It's definitely worth checking out. 2 COVID films that I saw within volume 1 was kind of this assignment where they gave directors this sort of license to use iPhones and anything they had around them to film shorts. So I think there's 6 total. Volume 1 has a short written by Rosie Perez, starring Rosie Perez and a couple other people. The first one is Leap, which stars Sanaa Lathan. That's written by Margaret Nagel. And then there's another one. There's one called Intersection that has Julianne Moore, Don Cheadle, and Talia Baslam. So it's incredible. It's really cool what people can do during COVID, and they made it work. And they all really work really well for shorts done in people's homes primarily. And the last one I wanted to talk about, is one called All My Friends Hate Me, which is a dark comedy kind of about the idea of like, if you reunite with people you went to high school with, are the memories that you had in your head only in your head, or do all your friends hate you? You know, it's like this real fucked up play on like insecurities when you come into a situation with people who kind of have this very set idea of who you are. You know, it's played kind of like this like thriller horror sort of comedy, but it's worth checking out.
It reminds me of that 30 Rock episode where Liz Lemon goes to her reunion and realizes that all of her memories of herself being like picked on and the outcast, she was actually being an asshole to people, and everybody else was like afraid of her and thought she was a real snide, know-it-all. But in her mind, she was this outcast nerd. So she keeps re-seeing memories, but with the added element of like what she said to make people so mad at her, or what she did to make people look at her so strangely, But I always think about that anyway, just that idea of like, it's not so much like that's the case of everybody, but it's always important to remember, like, wait a minute, we were all just trying to get through our day, and I probably came off pretty strange too. It's almost like it's that whole thing of if everybody you meet is an asshole, then maybe you're the problem, kind of thing.
Right. Damn.
But that sounds really interesting. I remember looking into that one, and I think I even checked out a trailer for that.
It's really good, man.
Yeah,
it's really good. And one more.
But thank you, Tribeca.
Oh, one more. I promise. I'll leave you alone after this. 7 Days, starring Geraldine Vishwadhan and Karan Soni. It's about 2 people that go on a date that was prearranged. They had no say, and COVID hits, so they have to kind of stay together for a couple of weeks. And you quickly find out that Geraldine's character is not as orthodox as she claims to be. So it's a cool comedy that really talks about tradition and a newer generation that's kind of leaning towards a new version of tradition.
Cool.
So, yeah, so
and
that's
as I was saying, yeah, thank you, Tribeca. That was awesome. Thank you for the access. We love this new model that we might get a few more festivals using this before everybody goes back to the in-person model. But I hope they learned that this is a viable way to get people involved who have issues being there for, health reasons or geographical reasons or financial, whatever. This is a great these virtual festivals is it's if it's sort of something that comes out of this year, I guess it's one of my favorite aspects of the last year that might, again, I think it makes accessibility much more of a real thing. So
pretty damn cool, man.
All right, let's move on to, we'll do a couple of these quickly because we do want to talk more about, I guess, the Tomorrow War, but
yes,
in the time away that we've had from the podcast, I think I was the only one that saw Fast. I don't even know. It's Fast Saga, Fast 9, whatever the
F9,
whatever the F9, Fast 9.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and just to say, like, it is exactly what these movies are. There's nothing that I'm going to say to add anything to it, but I mean, it's entertaining. Like if you're in on the series, which I absolutely am. It's entertaining. It's fun. It's funny at times. It's got some awesome action set pieces. Justin Lin coming back to the series, I think, is a good thing. He's done some of the better Fast movies in the series. I think he did 3, 4, 5, 6, and this one maybe. He's done a bunch of them.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's just these movies are just kind of getting more and more about. Again, this is not news, but it's on display full tilt, like the spectacle, the craziness, the character pieces that maybe you may have liked from certain ones, which I definitely did in the series, are kind of all just buried. And I mean, everything just kind of feels very simple, get everybody involved as much as possible, pull everyone back into series for whatever is to become of whatever Fast 10 is called. And I think they're doing 2 parts of it, I think, but or at least I've read that somewhere. Maybe that's wrong now because of COVID, but it's like everybody from the series is in some way back into the series, and like they literally everyone that is available that has been in these movies is basically in this movie, probably with the exception of The Rock and obviously Paul Walker. But
is Eva Mendes a holdout, or is she dead?
She is not in this. I don't know I can't remember if her character died. She was in Fast and Furious 2, right?
I think so.
Too Fast, Too Furious.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's in that one. I don't
John
remember what
Singleton's
happened
most
to that
important
character.
film.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
I don't know. Yeah, I liked it. I mean, it's fun. It's big. It's my second movie I've seen in theaters, and it was a press screening, so there was like 4 people there, and it was in Dolby.
Okay.
So it was phenomenal in Dolby. Yeah, it looked amazing, and it sounded amazing, and it was awesome to see it on the big screen. So I mean, it made a ton of money last weekend. So obviously, that's what everybody wants to watch, is a big movie like that, which will be interesting to see. Kind of how it holds over this weekend and what the rest of the summer box office looks like outside of the big movies like this and Black Widow, and but in all in all, I mean, it's a Fast and Furious movie. It's not the worst one of the series. It's probably in the back half for me, but yeah, Vin Diesel. That's all I'm saying. Vin Diesel.
Does he still love his life a quarter mile at a time?
Always, man. Always.
Oh, jeez. Okay, that's exciting.
If there's one thing you remember from this movie, from this series, it's that, or it's all about family.
It's all about family.
Every time, man.
And that they are talking about a crossover with the Jurassic series.
No,
right?
No. They are. You're right, but oh my god,
that would be a nightmare.
Should they do that or Universal Monsters? Like, what's the better or worse approach there? I don't know, but
neither.
No, space is this one? Do they actually go into space in this one? I guess you don't want to ruin that for us, but that's the word on the street.
I mean, I'm not ruining.
And that's the word in space.
It's in the trailer, I guess, if you've seen the trailer.
Oh, man, they go to space. Jesus Christ.
Okay, so moving on to I think maybe the one movie that we all saw of the feature ones is this is the most interesting test case for me, which is why I was like, you guys got to watch this movie. We got to talk about it on the podcast.
Yeah.
In the least, because we've talked a lot about, I've been so intrigued, like the logic of some of these acquisitions, sales, movies that were supposed to come out theatrically that got sold off. But we talked a lot about like how Paramount had been selling off a lot of their properties. They sold off the Without Remorse, the Michael B. Jordan film, to Amazon, the Tomorrow War, which we'll talk about in a moment, to Amazon, Coming to America, Borat. Like, they've sold all these movies to Amazon, but they kept one. They kept the Mark Wahlberg Infinite to launch on their Paramount Plus streaming service without much fanfare. They didn't release it when they launched the service. There was nothing really special about this release date. I guess except for the fact that it was either the week of or the week before Fast and the Furious 9 coming out in theaters, which doesn't seem to make much sense for an action movie. But yeah, it's Antoine Fuqua, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. This is Infinite. This movie was shot during the quarantine or during coronavirus, I know, or at least the majority of it was. And I only know that from watching Wall Street on HBO Max, Mark Wahlberg's new documentary series.
That's why his performance is so antiseptic.
Probably.
Oh my God.
But somebody talk about Infinite, because this movie, for the one to be the one they kept, I guess if you read the fine print, that basically just reads the one they couldn't sell.
Yeah.
Right.
This movie is a fucking train wreck.
It's a stinker.
It's hard to watch. And there was something that John and I were talking about, all of us were talking about, and I'll try to mirror the sentiment. I mean, there's something to be said about the idea that you can get a script, right, that's weird and quirky and action-packed, and it could be something like The Matrix, or it could be something like this. Like, you really don't know until something gets kind of put into film form sometimes how bad something is, because in theory this is not a terrible idea. This is like people that can kind of time travel, and
it kind of sounds like the Eternals in a way. They're these infinite beings who've been around for a lot of history, and they've had an influence on it. And it also reminded me of like Assassin's Creed or something like that, where it's like people kind of plugging themselves in, or having like a life. It had a video game like feel to it because of the sort of rebooting the characters as it goes through.
Right.
It uses reincarnation in a kind of video gamey way, I guess.
Yeah. That's about all I know about it.
Yeah.
Beyond that point is really all I know. It is like Assassin's Creed, but it is a train wreck of a movie. Very hard to get through. I stopped it maybe like 4 or 5 times during the course of it. It just
that's so funny you say that, because like I feel like it's been a consistent response for people that I've talked to that have watched the movie, that
really?
Like, and even myself a little bit, like it was like maybe 2 times I kind of stopped and started it, but almost everybody that I've talked to that's watched it, it's like either some variation on like it's hard to get through, or I've like tried 3 times to finish it and I'm barely getting to the finish line. But
or as honestly, I said, this is fucking unwatchable.
Right. Yeah. Same. Yep. 6 and 1, half dozen the other.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think from the start, like it's just like the movie. Yeah, it's high concept. It's kind of an interesting idea in the least. But I think the biggest thing for me is like right from the beginning of the movie, it's like immediately clear that he is so horribly miscast in this movie.
He is miscast, man.
Like it's just like. It's like they'll just put like they just want him in everything or anything because of like I guess his star power, quote unquote. But this is like one of those things, like I think maybe one of us joked about it, maybe it was John, like the whole like how much shit he got about The Happening.
Yeah.
Like just the performance in that. This movie just seems like it feels like one of his worst that he's ever had, for sure. And I just it's like one of those examples where you just like are in awe that like when it gets made, they're like watching these line readings and capturing these huge spectacle action sequences and like trying to make them look good and some of them look horrible in this movie, but the performances are just so bad, like across the board, but him especially.
Yeah.
Like the star of the movie, he is so miscast and so bad in this movie.
Yeah. So, sometimes I feel like Hollywood still hasn't gotten past the stage where they have to hire people that are muscular or in the greatest shape in the world to have action. I mean, if I would take anybody that could act over somebody like Mark Wahlberg, if he's gonna.
Wahlberg.
I mean, if he's gonna.
Like
so okay. So one of the things that was really pretty. Somebody's gonna bring this up whenever this comes out. Is this man is supposed to have some mental health issues, right? And his interpretation of mental health issues is like just kind of like putting his head over and touching his head and kind of going, like
that's called a headache.
Yeah. So your schizophrenia manifests itself as headaches, and that's it. And he's just an angry person. So there's no he's supposed to be paranoid, schizophrenic, all these diagnosed things.
But Ronald, he also says I'd be drooling in a straitjacket or something like that. So it's like that's his view of it, but the impression they have of it is like this 1950s idea of like, people that are on medication aren't these weirdos who have to go seek the medicine from some crazy drug lord. I mean, I know that this is a fantasy scenario, but I thought the way the movie, I would not be surprised if I feel like if this movie got any cultural traction at all.
Yeah.
One of the first things you would see would be people criticizing the sort of treatment, the kind of the way it loops mental illness in when it doesn't really have to. It makes it part of the story in a way it doesn't really have to. And it does it in a way that feels very outdated, I thought.
It's the reefer madness of mental health stuff. Like it really makes it feel like you're like, like if you're Mark Wahlberg when you have some mental health issues, that's scary. Like you're just punching people square in the middle of their face. Like that doesn't seem like it's a lot more complex than that. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Wow.
I also felt like it's another example, and like I think he's becoming like a poster boy for this, or whatever the right term is. Like when we talked about in the past, like whether it's filmmakers or actors that like kind of just do whatever they want when they're in a movie. Yes. Like I kind of feel like Antoine Fuqua is kind of like aligning himself in movies 1-2 back and even going 1-2 forward, like with these huge stars that really drive the property. And it's like I almost wonder if, thinking about, he did Fast 8, and Fast 8 was not that good. And I mean, he's doing this, and he's doing the new Will Smith like slave emancipation action thing that he's got going on. And Will Smith is like one of the biggest stars around and has that kind of reputation. Although he is a very good actor, and I hope that's not the case. But I almost just wonder if like Mark Wahlberg is in one of these situations where like he does anything they ask him to do as long as he gets to do whatever he wants to do. Right. And it looks like that in this movie. It looks so phoned in and just like he's just literally acting like Mark Wahlberg. And there's no character in this film. Like there's no character development. There's nothing. Some other people in the movie are doing something interesting, but around the whole movie, it's just it's just a mess. But I can't get over him. Like I can't get past it. It's
Steve. There's no character in this film.
But getting past the opening seconds, the narration right from the start is the flattest.
The narration.
Like, line
oh my
readings.
God!
And even the way he puts a little spin on certain lines when he's like, and whatever he says, where he's like, the possibilities are infinite. It's like you can hear him trying to do it, but I guess it is like both him trying and failing at something, and as you said, him clearly not giving a shit, or at least not engaging with the fantasy of the material or anything like that. Like whatever is happening with this movie that someone could have saved, and that alternate universe version that you're talking about, Ronald, where like somehow this material became a good movie, it got developed properly, and you wouldn't have his performance in it. You may not have him anywhere near it, but definitely this is not the like charming lead performance that's going to make this extremely arcane mythology work. Once like every scene or so, they add some wrinkle to the mythology. And it does not help that some of the exposition that also kind of you need to know is delivered in this really wooden way by Sophie Cookson, who is about who is, I would say, equally miscast or just incapable. I hate to use these words, but this movie really did feel, I mean, I was wondering like what happened here? Like how much money did they spend on this thing? How did this happen? And you're kind of talking about why this may have happened, Steve, that it's almost like a placeholder movie that just had to move forward, and it had Mark Wahlberg attached, and it had Antoine Fuqua attached in such a way that it's like, this movie's gonna happen, we need to shoot it, we've got this slot, we're gonna put this out, but nobody really feels like they care about this at all. Like this movie just does not feel like, even the visual style of it and the effects and the kind of fantasy that it does have in it, it's not something that feels visually developed. And I noticed this during a lot of the action scenes where I was like there's a scene where two vehicles kind of drive through an office building, and that kind of, you could have had fun with that sequence. That could have been cool and interesting. And, you know, there's a couple of shots where it's like, oh, some second unit director did put the camera in an interesting place. And for just a second, I felt something when like desks were flying everywhere. And then instantly I was like, nothing cool is happening here. And, you know, Mark Wahlberg, like we talked about this maybe last episode, but definitely recently about like, the love and hate relationship we have with him. This is like the worst movie to point to if you're trying to make a case that he's got any talent whatsoever, because it, you know, phoning it in, you know, sounds generous in a way, but I don't know how you could have known how this thing would come off. I mean, is it better to kind of have the flop sweat of Chiwetel Ejiofor, who like is giving this his all, but still not able to create anything, I didn't think, with this kind of generic villain that he's doing. So I you know, I hope it doesn't dim his his luster in some way, because I love him. But you know, I feel like it should have been obvious on the page, but I think we keep coming back to that, the point that you made, Ronald, that you wouldn't know. You would think, oh, this kind of mythology, this kind of lore, it's big. And it's a name director attached to it. And it's like you said, Steve, there's an actor who, for whatever we want to say about Wahlberg, movies get made, you know, his movies are open, budgets get approved with him for some reason. So so it's but it is a misfire.
It's a real misfire, man. Get Mark Wahlberg out of here. Like, what's gonna have to happen is you're gonna need somebody like, I'd hate, like Soderbergh, or somebody that can or like what's his name, Paul Thomas Anderson, or somebody that can yell at him, somebody that's a prestige director that's like, if you fuck up my movie, you will never work here again, because that's what it's gonna take, because he destroys movies at this point. He is poison to me.
That's some of his best stuff that he's done, though. If you think about what you're saying, like, that's some of his best stuff. You're talking about stuff with Scorsese, with David O. Russell, you know, like those are his best performances, point, like, period. Like, that's no question.
Hands down.
And it's because like he's in their movie, someone's not making his movie. And that's kind of what it feels like, that these movies are becoming, even the Peter Berg movies that he's done on Netflix, which are kind of, you know, we're better than this for sure, but still kind of hover in that area of like, it's just him being Mark Wahlberg. Like, I don't know, it's weird. All right, well, that's Infinite on Paramount Plus. Not recommended by anyone here, but if you're absolutely out of options, still don't watch it.
Take a walk.
But yeah, the feature review we'll get into a little bit now. This is the other side of, not in terms of quality, I guess we'll get into that, but the other side of that conversation with the Paramount sell-off. So this is another title they sold to Amazon. This is their big movie that they announced as opening, you know, 4th of July weekend, which was interesting back when Top Gun Maverick was still possibly coming out in theaters, which is also a Paramount title that ended up getting pushed back to the holiday season of this year. But so they sell The Tomorrow War to Amazon Prime. It's coming out today on Amazon. If you have the streaming service, you can find it. This is another big sci-fi action movie, starring Chris Pratt. Who else is in this?
Sam Richardson.
Oh God, I love Sam Richardson so much.
Sam Richardson, man.
J.K. Simmons, Betty Gilpin,
Yvonne Strahovski. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Yvonne Strahovski. Yep. She's in it as well. But the synopsis of this is basically, you know, in the year 2022, something happens where people from the future come back to the present to warn humankind about like a eventual war with these alien creatures that is threatening to wipe out humanity and the world as we know it, and basically opening a draft to send people into the future to fight these things to try to prevent that from happening. And Chris Pratt's character stars as, you know, a father, a scientist, a high school biology teacher or science teacher who gets drafted and becomes a part of this whole Tomorrow War effort. And the movie kind of just goes from there. But I mean, this is a pretty big movie, you know, probably bigger than any of the movies that we've talked about in terms of the sell-off that have gone to streaming services. Now, you didn't get to watch it, right, John?
Right. I was.
Right. So there's really.
I misunderstood the instructions for the screener, frankly. So it was okay. My bad. But
so there's not really much in terms of spoilers for it. But I mean, I guess in general, Ronald, initial thoughts. What did you think? I mean, yeah, I don't know. Let's just start there.
So I guess one of the things is, like, you know, with a big budget film like this, you're either on board or you aren't. And, you know, it just kind of goes on a journey of crazy. And the problem is I just saw Infinite before that. And, you know, and then I saw this. So I was like, holy shit, this movie is the best motion picture I've ever seen in my human existence.
Here's the Oscar.
Right. So then I calmed down a little bit, but it's a fun movie, man. It's a fun movie with some cool time travel stuff that, I mean, you know, one of the things that makes this movie a little weirder too is, like, because the draft, because aliens are killing people at the rate that they're killing people, civilians have to go back. So, like, the draft is a lot more random than just, you know, the normal draft. They're just picking people, 1,000 people every week to go back to fight these aliens, and there's a 20% survival rate. It's a fun movie to me. You know, I had a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, and I was not expecting to. I think because I was just like, I don't know, man. Like, I think sci-fi sometimes can be an excuse to just write a shitty script. And while this wasn't a perfect script, it's fun enough that I could sit this in front of somebody 12 and over, and they would enjoy it enough. You know, it was fun enough. You know, it was aliens. It was Chris Pratt being great, Sam Richardson being funny. You know, it worked for me. It worked for me.
The creatures looked kind of cool and creepy.
They're like a good look at these long arm things with Steve. Would you?
They're called
kind of pale and gross.
They're called white spikes.
Ooh, white spikes. Oh, because of the. Yeah, those spikes were crazy.
So it's a really cool creature design, and I do think that the creature reveal when you're with his little group of civilian soldiers when they go into the future for the first time, and you know they're kind of in this stairwell, and you kind of first get to see these things that these future soldiers have been talking about for a bit in the movie. That is a really cool sequence, and a lot of the creature design sequences are really good. I like this too. Like I thought it was, yeah. I mean, I guess benefited from not watching it right after Infinite, but I kind of think that, like, my big criticism with it is, like, it kind of falls into a lot of the same things we've been talking about recently. Is like the movie I think is just too long, and it's like 2 hours and 20 minutes.
It is so long,
and a lot of what feels too long in the movie are just a number of scenes that just go on for far too long.
Yeah,
like there's a lot of fight sequences. There's a lot of, like, just talk scenes, like with father daughter, father wife. Like there's a lot of things that just go on, like kind of really trying to really get that pathos going in the movie that just like lasts too long for me.
Yeah, and
I think a lot of what Chris Pratt is really good at is getting that stuff quickly. Like he's got a lot of charisma. He's got the charm. He's got some emotion in the way he talks to his daughter in the movie. I just feel like some of those scenes just sit in that moment too long that it kind of turned on me, where I kind of got like annoyed by that. And then it almost becomes like, oh, this is too much, or there's too much acting happening right now.
Yeah. I agree.
But as an idea, I think the movie is pretty awesome. Like I like the idea, it's kind of got this like Terminator, future war, crisscross timelines, characters, future versions of characters. Like it's got this cool thing going where a lot of that works, and I think it's a smart move to have someone like Sam Richardson who in the scenes that he's in is just like pulling the movie out from everybody in the scene with him. Like he's so good. He's so funny. And even when he's not being funny, he's so good. Like he kind of balances it really good. He's like another scientist, I think, in the movie. But he's kind of a coward in ways, but it plays really well. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is definitely something worth watching. Like I feel like like I said, the length, kind of sitting too long in sequences. And I think that goes also to hurt the movie in ways, especially like in the effects heavy sequences.
Yeah.
When you can get in there and out real quick, I feel like when the effects are good, like you don't even think about it being an effect. But like when they're in these long sequences and you are seeing these creatures a lot, and all parts of them in different settings.
It's sitting on top of the screen.
Yes,
like it's sitting on top of like you see the film and then you see the monster on top of it. You're like, you
start to really dissect it. And like there's even like the finale of the movie where it's in the trailer, I think, like they're in this snowy locale, like this real world setting, like because it's in that sequence for like 10 to 15 minutes, there's only so much geography we're covering in this sequence, and it just, you really start to see the seams of like just reusing stuff in the scene, or reusing shots or like composites and things like that, especially when you're talking so much CG. But I mean, that's if I'm going to kind of criticize it. For a lot of the movie, I think it's, like you said, Ronald, it's entertaining. Like, it's like, it's probably one of the better of the Paramount titles to go out to streamers, or that they kept, anything that they've kind of released.
Right.
It's a little more down the middle. Like you said, like I could probably show this to 10 people and probably 8 of them would really like this movie.
Hell yeah.
It kind of is like a mass appeal. And people like Chris Pratt, I'm still kind of in the middle on Chris Pratt. Like I really like him. But there are certain sequences in the movie where he's kind of going for that hero shot, that hero look, that hero line too much. Like, or he's overdoing it a little bit. But there's enough of the best parts of him in this movie that I think it outweighs it. I think, like you really want some of the comedy that he has, like the comedic timing that he has, and, like little one-off conversations he has with characters that are funny, that kind of humanize him a little more. But I don't know. Tomorrow War was fun. It was fun,
man. There were weird things that they didn't play out as much. So like one of the big reveals is why they send certain people back in or to the future, right? They said it one time to him and then they never said it to anybody else. So you really don't understand why. It would have been cool if they would have talked about that a little more, because that's a huge thing to hear before you go to fight. Like it, what you know what I'm talking about, Steve?
Yeah, and they use like newscasts and like political press conferences, as a device to explain a lot of what's happening quickly. Yeah, which is effective. But that is cool. That's an interesting part of what they decided to not have a part of that, but just have a character just drop in passing in a conversation.
Look, if that would be the talk of every person that was going to war.
Right.
Is the idea that you would find out a vital piece of information about your life. You'd be like, oh my God, like 2 characters know it and they don't really talk about it past that. Oh, by the way, that character was really good. Aldous Hodge's brother, Edwin Hodge.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was great in that.
He's great. Man. He was really good.
I have never seen him in anything else. For anybody that doesn't know, Aldous Hodge was in the Amazon film One Night in Miami. He played oh God, why can't I remember anything? He was in One Night in Miami. Incredible in that movie. But his brother plays in this film and was really good in it.
Wasn't he also was that him in The Invisible Man?
That's Aldous.
Aldous,
Aldous, yeah. So and his brother was he was the cop. I'm so sorry because I confused the brothers. Now that I've seen his little brother, I now see his brother in all these movies instead of him, because they look kind of the same, except Edwin's a little shorter.
He is, He's
a little shorter, but this was a solid movie, man. I'd suggest that this is a fun film that you can get into. Lots of explosions, lots of people dying.
The one shot where like it's in the last 20 minutes of the movie, I guess. It's in the trailer also, I believe, but there's a shot where there's like, it's a wide shot where someone's falling, he's jumping after them, the creature's underneath of them, and the world is exploding. Like that shot is awesome.
So
that looked cool as shit. And
cool, man.
I don't know what it reminded me of. I feel like it reminded me of another movie, maybe like a World War Z or something, but it looked really cool. But yeah, I don't know. I'd recommend the Tomorrow War. It's a fun action movie. You know, Chris Pratt's now a son-in-law to Arnold Schwarzenegger. So this is kind of like, this feels like an Arnold kind of movie. You know what I mean? like when Arnold was on his action run, like it'll have its fans and it'll have the people beating a drum for it. So maybe he got a couple, and you know, Terminator, there you go. Maybe he got some tips from the man. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting to hear you talk about Chris Pratt, because not having seen the movie, but having seen the trailer, I did sort of slate it in my head as like, it's one of those movies where Chris Pratt looks like he's too made up, or the way he's lit or something. And it's just too slick, and there's a cheese factor or something. And he is like a talented actor who kind of hits those lines sometimes too hard when he's trying to do something calculated. And it made me think of the way that when Jim Carrey is doing something a little bit more serious, how he's got that comedic, like there's so much control over everything that it does sometimes feel a little contrived compared to how alive those guys can feel in a more comic moment. I mean, I still think is it any mystery that like Chris Pratt, his generally best work is like either on Parks and Rec, where he was schlubby and it was kind of rough around the edges. His character even was kind of messy and had that improv, like you hear all these stories about him improvising a lot of those lines. So clearly he was kind of tapping into something, but the show wasn't slowing down to make him look cool. It was doing the opposite, in fact. And then the other best work he does, right, is James Gunn directing him. And James Gunn is not going to have a beefcake hero that isn't being undercut in some way. And so, you know, James Gunn kind of does that work for Chris Pratt of like, you can be even kind of handsome or whatever, and I'll let the movie do the job of like knocking you down a peg so that it never seems like you're preening for the camera or like you're milking a line like that. So I don't know. I just think that there's something about him, you know, when you said all that, Steve, I was like, I haven't seen this obviously, but even in the trailer, I thought, oh, this looks like kind of him in Jurassic World mode, where it's going to be, you know, a competent action performance, but not really, to me, feel like it has that life in it that makes you just go, okay, this person is a great action star, or even this person is a great actor. But I've loved Chris Pratt in a couple, 3 things. So I do believe, I mean, the guy's got some, you know, he's got that spark for sure, but I don't know, maybe some people, I don't know, it might be down to the production value of the movie or something. I don't know. Like it needs to be a little more self-aware or something for that stuff to work.
I mean, you're spot on. I mean, that is my gripe, if anything, with, you know, with his performance or with him in this movie. It's that it just seems like it's almost like it's like you want to know that that's a movie star, but like you don't want to be told it's a movie star, like, or something, you know, in the performance. And like every shot he's in, you're to know, like, this is a fucking action movie star. Like he's got the wide shot, they're shooting up on him, he looks tall compared to everybody, you know, every shot, like you don't see anybody else taking their shirts off to get this thing installed, but he's got his shirt off the whole scene, you know. And it's just like, I'm all about, like, you know, he looks amazing, don't get me wrong, like my man is like killing it.
No one's complaining about nice oily muscles. We're pro bodies here on
Two thumbs. Yeah,
body positive, I think, is the right way to say that here.
It's just I think
body
that's what
pros.
it is. Like,
body pros.
You want to recognize them as a movie star. You don't want to be like told the entire movie, like, you need to know this guy.
That's a perfect way to say it, Steve. That's honestly it. It's like you want to realize that watching the movie, not be constantly like nudged, right?
Which you do in Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, you can't deny it. Like, it's all over the place. And you walk out of it like, God damn, that's a movie star. And I don't know. I don't know that he's captured that since then. You know, that we've talked about that. But this is fun. Again, I think
I want to see it.
We're both really recommending it to check it out. And the creatures are really quite cool and creepy and scary looking. But yeah, that's on Amazon Prime right now. As this podcast comes out, if you have that, which a lot of people have Amazon Prime. It's like number 2 behind Netflix. If you got it, check it out. Check it out. What else? I think that's it, man. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a whole lot of stuff, man.
Yeah. We covered a lot.
Any loose stuff you've been watching? Any random stuff?
Loose stuff.
Any loose stool?
Any Luca stuff that anybody has been watching or has watched?
Oh, Luca was so good, man.
What did you
I have not seen Luca yet. Well, my daughter's seen it like 7 times, but I haven't watched it all the way through myself yet. What did you guys think of it?
I loved it, man. I loved it. It's, to me, it's kind of, Pixar's kind of hit this stride, man. This feels like, I never thought I'd ever say this. This was like the most mature Pixar film that I've seen in terms of like, I know that a lot of them were like, this is how emotions work. This is how this works. They didn't have to do this with that. This was like, friends, shit gets complicated. And this is how it could get complicated. Especially if you get into a situation where you're trying to be accepted and you want to go to a new world and a new environment. I think that this is the best approach, you know, for every one that they deal with, like emotions and senses and death and, you know, going to heaven. They should have one like this, one that's a little more. This is weird that it deals with a sea monster, but it's the most grounded in its relationships. I really felt it, man. Like I hadn't seen anything in a while. I was like, damn, man, like I felt that feeling before.
Yeah.
For real. Like I haven't, like, this wasn't like a distant thing. It felt very close to the heart. So I don't know. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was more of a, I think you're right, Ronald. I might not have even pinpointed that. It's got a little bit of that Pixar kind of, it's an oddly shaped story in some ways, and that, like, if you put like, when does the movie reach what you might call the second act, or when does it get to its prime conflict? Pixar movies can often have funny structures where that's concerned, and sometimes you have a movie like Up where this part of the movie that people talk about isn't even the part of the movie that's the main plot. Or we talked about it almost as a negative with The Good Dinosaur, where it just feels like it's a story, but it doesn't feel like it cohered, you know, as well as they can.
Yeah.
And I think you're right, Ronald. I hadn't really put my finger on it, but this one does have like a good, clean narrative. I do think the fantasy world of it doesn't seem, from the outset, this movie didn't seem that engrossing to me, either in its look or its story. I just kind of trusted that it was Pixar. And once I let myself kind of sink into what it was trying to do, I do think it's really visually pleasing. There were a couple times today when I was watching it where I paused it and the image on the screen was just so bright. Like I would return to the screen and it would strike me as, oh, this is so bright. These colors are so bold and vivid. I didn't notice it as much while watching the movie because you're just kind of watching moving images. But a freeze frame really did make me think, oh, that sky is like what, like super blue and bright. And I've heard this referred to as kind of their Miyazaki movie. And I do think visually there are some things that seem like they might be nods to it. But, you know, Pixar has this thing where they take joy in the physicality of the world and the textures and the light and everything. And this looked great on the screen. And, you know, it's not like we need to talk about resolution or pixels, but it does seem like Pixar is a company that's going to take full advantage of like giving you as much detail and nuanced detail as they can and letting you see all of that. And this movie, I was just staring at the screen, and it's got some funny moments. And I think you're right, Ronald. I think in the long run, we might revisit our sort of Pixar ranking episode and include some of the more recent Pixar movies, because, you know, I do sort of I can't help but think, like, how does this fit in with these classics we've talked about by this company?
Yeah.
And you might sort of not appreciate a new Pixar movie that doesn't have that huge hook you're talking about to it. Like, this is about your emotions or whatever. This is about death. This is more a story about characters, but it does feel like it's relating to something about like embracing a new identity or coming out in a way of who you really are, or exploring a new identity, discovering something you want to be and telling the world, this is who I am. I don't know. There's something going on here that really did tug at the heartstrings, but you're right. It worked best as like a fable, a fairy tale, in a sense, and is beautiful to look at. So I'll be interested to see what you think, Steve.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, check it out. All right, that's gonna do it, huh? We good?
I think so.
That's a whole lot.
Did you guys watch any random things? No, that's it. I'm
guessing that you did.
Yes, man. Just let me mention these 3 things. I promise, man, because I want to tuck these things away. Okay, Apple
three
TV.
things.
Apple TV. C. Oh my God. Takes a little while to fall into it, but when you do, Jesus Christ, this thing is like on Game of Thrones first and second season level tension. It's so fucking good. I'm ready for season 2. They just announced that Dave Bautista is going to be the villain. Get the fuck out of here.
Bautista and Momoa?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I'm interested in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's his brother.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Next
No,
one.
I mean, honestly, I that sounds pretty interesting to me.
It's pretty damn cool, man. A Quiet Place 2, finally saw that. Good, man. It wasn't the first one, but it was incredibly close to being of quality the first one, man. The first
you know
one
what I mean about getting to the end and you see what it was all about and what it was really leading up to, this moment of like this almost like, you know,
what a kick in the balls, man. Like, you know, it seems like things are gonna be one way and then they just turn.
Mm-hmm.
It's so well done. I like that. And then a suggestion. So I think probably every week I'm gonna try to do this. I'm gonna try to watch more Blu-rays because 4K Ultra HD stuff has just gotten really cool. The Willy Wonka 50th anniversary restore. Jesus Christ. If you want to do yourself a favor, rent it. You can rent it because the restore is going to be, they're kind of distributing it on all the streaming services. Mm-hmm. I'd suggest maybe Vudu or Apple if you have access to it. That restore is gorgeous. You can see every bit. You can see the threads on Willy Wonka's jacket. You can see the text behind people that's like 20 feet away. Like it is clear on a level that I just have never seen. And the sound is mixed incredibly. So Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, 50th anniversary, 4K restore. Jesus Christ. Those are the 3, man.
All right.
Love
you did it in 3.
Love it.
Yeah.
Man of your word. You sure there's not a 4th?
No, that's it. That's it.
All right, cool. Well, that's
good.
That'll wrap up episode 305. Moviesmovie.com is the site. You can kind of use it as a landing page to find us on any of the podcast platforms that are out in the world. If the one that you choose to listen to us through it has an option for you to review or rate the podcast or even share it. The little share button that has like a little square with an up arrow almost in every app. You could maybe text it, send it to a friend or family member, somebody who enjoys movies as much as you do. That'd be great. What else? Next week, I mean, hopefully, like I said earlier, like this Fear Street thing on Netflix, it's been getting a lot of buzz and it looks really good. And I like that it's like rated R and it's like apparently very rated R. And it's a really interesting model to go, a 3-movie type anthology that's all in the same story of this little town that's apparently cursed, and one each week. Netflix is just at that level where they can just do this, and I'm really interested to see how they play out as a 1, 2, 3, and specifically the first one that's coming out the day that this podcast drops is reportedly basically like a 90s slasher movie, which just sounds perfect.
Wow.
So hopefully we can talk about that next week for sure. I got nothing else, man. Do you guys want to say anything else before we get out of here?
No, I think that's it for me.
I just want to mention that Marvel Schmarvel is taking a little break this week. Just like this show took a break last week, and so did Marvel Schmarvel. But our spinoff, where we cover Loki episode by episode, we're taking a little break. We'll be back next week to cover episodes 3, 4, and 5 of the first season of Loki, or of whatever Loki is. They've said it might have a second season, but yeah, we've missed a couple weeks here, but we're kind of ramping back up. So next week, Marvel Schmarvel will be back exclusively on YouTube. But as for now, you just have to sit there and sit on all your Loki observations that you want to shout at us while we're saying our idiotic observations about Loki.
You got to just kind of bear with us as we try to get them back into the main TVA timeline.
Yeah, right. We got to, right.
We've got all these
prune some timelines
fractured off, so we got to get them back in line. So just bear with us.
Hell yeah, give us some time, man.
Cool. All right, man. Good seeing you guys, and always love chatting with you about this stuff. And as always, you've made our day. Thanks.
Bye.